Hi everyone, my name is Karis and welcome back to my little corner of the internet where I talk about books and other things that I enjoy. So over the course of the last week or so, I read this little book that a few of you might have heard of called The Poppy War by R F Kuang. This is one of the most hyped books I've heard talked about on BookTube this year, and I decided that I wanted to read it and I thought I would vlog it as well. So that's what this video is, but I realised that I didn't film an introduction for it, so I just wanted to jump on now and explain a little bit of context around why I decided to vlog this book in particular. So the reason why this book intrigued me so much is I've heard so many people say that they went into it not really knowing what to expect or not thinking that they would particularly enjoy it or that it was something for them, and then absolutely loving it. And I wanted to see if that would ring true for me, because this is a fantasy book, an adult fantasy at that, and stereotypically I do not read fantasy. I feel like I go on and on about how much I don't read fantasy or how much fantasy doesn't appeal to me in a lot of my videos, and when I actually sat down and thought about it, I realised that it's actually been a very long time since I read a fantasy book. I genuinely think the last time that I read a solid fantasy story was when I read Game of Thrones, and I read that about 5 years ago now, and I really enjoyed Game of Thrones. I'm just super intimidated about getting on with the rest of the series, and I just sat down and I had a bit of an identity crisis, to be honest, because I was like, why have I spent so long defining myself as someone who actively dislikes almost fantasy? Like, I actively avoid it. And I actually looked into this book a bit and the premise, and I thought, I actually think I might enjoy that, and maybe I don't dislike fantasy after all. So that is why I decided to read this book, and I thought I would vlog it to cover my thoughts and feelings as I went through it. So that's what the next bit of this video is. I basically vlogged, I would say, probably about 2/3 of this, and then I was actually on holiday, as you'll see in the video. I was in Cornwall and I just sort of got sidetracked and my camera battery ran out and all sorts of things. So when the footage of the vlog runs out, I'll jump back on here and wrap up the last little bit of this book and my thoughts and feelings towards it. Yeah, I just want to say, because this is a vlog, it was very difficult to sort of talk about my feelings towards the book without giving spoilers. So I would suggest, if you want to know like absolutely nothing about this book before going into it, then to not watch the video until you've read it. And I also just wanted to say that if you do go and read this book, there are some very dark, hairy topics that are covered in it. Some trigger warnings would be rape, sexual assault, drug use, genocide. I will find a list of, like, a comprehensive list of the trigger warnings and put it in the description for anyone who wants to know more about the possible content of this book. I would also highly recommend, before reading it, especially if you want to know more about the nature of the content, to look into the Sino-Japanese War and the events that happened during that, because this book, while it's set in the past, like further back than that, the events and some of the things that are depicted are based on real things that happened during that time period. But yes, aside from that, I will just put in the footage now. So it's finally happening, everyone. I'm finally going to pick up one of the most hyped books on this platform, and that is The Poppy War by R F Kuang. I have just heard so many people talk about this, and I thought, why not read it to see if I can actually like fantasy? So yeah, I'm really excited. I've heard people say that this is a very good book to get into if you don't read a lot of fantasy. Like, it's quite accessible, so I'm hoping that is going to be the case. I'm also quite nervous about some of the things that are going to happen. I obviously know that it's going to be very hard hitting, and I know that there are certain topics that this covers that are potentially going to be very graphic and disturbing. I've heard mentions of chapter 21, I think it is the one that everyone's like emotionally distressed by. So we'll see when I get to that. But yeah, I'm gonna pick this up today, and I thought I'd bring you along on the journey with me. I'm just gonna get on with reading this now. So I've actually got a lot of packing to do because I'm going to Cornwall with my family tomorrow. Well, I'm getting the train back to my parents' house tomorrow, and then we're going to Cornwall the day after. So I need to pack. So yeah, I'm gonna do that now, and I think I'm gonna listen to the start of this on audio. I think that should help me get into it. Let's go. Hey, so hopefully you can bear with this weird angle and this weird fringe being clipped out of the way situation, because I am actually gonna put some makeup on my face for the first time in months. It feels like months. It feels like an eternity, honestly. I'm not even sure if I still know how to apply makeup and if it's even going to match the colour of my skin. So we'll see, but I thought while I was doing this, I would talk a little bit about the Poppy War. While I was packing, I've listened to 3 chapters of the Poppy War, and I'm really enjoying it so far. Like, There's been no real fantastical elements at the moment, but I kind of like that. I kind of like that we're like learning about the world and the backstory. So far we've been introduced to Rin, who's the main character, and you find out that she's from like she's a war orphan, so she's been adopted by this family who didn't really want her because both of her parents were killed in one of the wars. Basically at the beginning of the book you find that this family have plans to marry her off, and she really doesn't want that, so she decides that she wants to get out of that life, and to do that she realizes that she needs to pass this test called the Keiju in order to go to a military academy, and she knows that she has to do really well in it because she wants to get into the one where she doesn't have to pay any fees because she can't afford to pay tuition. So there's only one school in the country, like the most prestigious one, that she can go to with no tuition. So she basically dedicates her life to studying for this test, and she passes. She ends up being the top person in her province, which nobody believes that she can have done that because she hasn't got like the social status. She's also described as being dark skinned, and she's faced a lot of prejudice because of that as well. So no one really understands how she managed to pass this test, but she does end up being able to go to the school that she wanted to go to. So she travels there to the capital, and that's obviously a massive culture shock for her when she gets there. I think she feels a bit like stuck because she doesn't think she's going to fit in there, but she also doesn't fit in back where she's from. It's kind of like she's imagined and worked for this better life for herself, but now that she's actually got it, she's sort of questioning whether this is actually a better life for all, or if she would have been better off sticking with where she was. But anyway, she's there, so you're sort of just learning about the system and the classes. Through the classes, R F Kuang has sort of built the world a lot as well, so you're finding out a lot of the history of the country as she's being taught it, and you're just finding out some other things as well about like the politics and the previous poppy wars. So for someone who isn't used to reading fantasy like me, I actually think that's really good, because I think if I'd just been thrown into a world where all these fantastical elements were already there and you sort of learnt about them a little bit at a time as you went through the story, or you were just expected to like immediately grasp some of it, then I think that I would have really struggled with it. So I'm not sure whether this sort of way of introducing the world would work for everyone, but for me, I'm really enjoying it. So yeah, at the point I'm at now, she's just met some of her fellow classmates and she's gone to a few of her classes, so not that much has happened so far. It's just like the introduction, but I just thought I would check in and say that I'm really enjoying it. And I'm also like really enjoying listening to it on audio. I don't think I'll listen to the whole thing on audio, but I think it's actually served me really well to listen to the first few chapters and be introduced to the world via audio, because I actually think that sometimes I process information a lot better when I'm being told it and when I'm hearing it than when I'm reading it. So to have someone like read out the book and like explain the history that way, although it's exactly the same as it appears on the page, I do think that my mind has like taken it in a lot more. Like I've understood it a lot more than I thought I would. I thought I would really struggle with that, but I think so far, I mean, I might get halfway through and be like, what the hell is going on? But so far I'm enjoying it. So yeah, I think it equates to about 60 or 70 pages, so I've still got a lot to go. I'm not sure if I'll read any more tonight, but I will definitely listen / read a fair bit of it tomorrow, because I've got about an hour and a half long train journey, and then I've got another hour in the car. Hi, I don't even know if you're gonna hear me, but I'm on the train with my many belongings, my suitcase. I've got about an hour and a half on here, so I'm going to read some of the Poppy War. I'm going to read the physical book because I forgot my headphones. Classic. If you remember this location and these shelves, you have followed me on social media for a very long time. Morning everyone. As you can see, it's a brand new day now. I think the last little clip I filmed, I was on the train traveling back to my parents' house, and I'm here now, but I'm only going to be here for like an hour or so more because we're gonna set out in the car really soon to travel down to Cornwall. But I thought I would just check in on how my reading's going with the Poppy War. So I didn't read too much yesterday. I did read a bit on the train, but the journey in total wasn't really that long. It was about an hour and a half maybe, and then I listened to a little bit more of the audiobook last night when I was in bed as well, but I was so tired. So I'm on page 130. I can't remember what I was on at the beginning of yesterday. I reckon I've read around 50 pages of it yesterday, which obviously if I keep going at that rate it's going to take me quite a while, but I have got a 4 or 5 hour car journey ahead of me, and I'm very good at reading in the car, and I've got my headphones this time to listen to the audiobook as well, so I'm hoping that I can like get a really big chunk of this done during the journey. So where I got to last night, I think, was sort of the introduction to the fantastical elements of this book coming into play. So before that point you have learned about different gods and also different mythologies and different beliefs that people may or may not have, but it had more just been taught. There was nothing that had happened that could be considered to be fantastical, I don't think. But at the end of the chapter that I read yesterday, Rin is basically able to sort of, I guess, dispel energy and put a big crack in the floor. So the tutor that's seen her do this is the law tutor, as in law spelled L-O-R-E, not L-A-W, and he really wants her to pledge law so that she can train with him. And he says, who are the gods, where do they reside, why do they do what they do? These are the fundamental questions of law. I can teach you more than key manipulation. I can show you the pathway to the gods. I can make you a shaman. So yeah, it's sort of introducing that shaman element to this story now, which I think is obviously going to be one of the real key elements, and I'm interested to see now how that develops and how that plays out. I think I've had a really gradual like introduction into this world and into what a shaman really is, because I didn't really know before, but I think I understand it now and I'm ready to see what's gonna happen. Another thing that I found quite interesting in this, which I actually quite liked, is somewhere in the bit that I just read, it describes Rin getting her period for the first time and not knowing what that is, and then it talks about her grappling mentally with what that might mean and how she thinks that it's going to set her behind, because she's gonna have to go through this pain every single month. And she's like, no wonder there's not very many girls that train here, or very many girls that go on to have like really advanced positions. And I thought that was really interesting. I don't know if that's the sort of thing that in fantasy nowadays comes up, but when I used to read fantasy and dystopia books like that when I was younger, I always used to think like, well, what happens when the girls get their periods? There's like never any mention of it. So I thought that was quite cool to see this discussed in this as well, and to follow Rin as she sort of dealt with that, and then she made a decision about it basically, and like what that might mean for her identity and her future. I'm here several hours later, and you can definitely tell I've been sitting in a car for many hours because I look rough. But in the car I finished part 1 and I've read a few chapters into part 2. I'm about halfway through the book now, and just I'm so ready to see what happens next, but also I'm not ready, because from the couple of chapters that I've read of part 2, it was very clear that part 1 was like easing me into the story, teaching me about the characters, like getting to know the world, and I feel like part 2 shit is just gonna hit the fan. Like I know there's gonna be some very difficult scenes to get through coming up, so I'm glad that I've got some other books here with me for when I might feel like I need a break. But yeah, just in summary, I'm still loving it. I love a lot of the characters. Like Rin is obviously very complex. I'm very interested and very invested in her story arc, but I am intrigued as to what she'll become as the story goes on, because she obviously is very capable of having a lot of power, and I'm not sure how she will use that power. I also really like Cike. He's probably my favourite at the moment, and I also really like Rin's master. He's probably one of the characters that's like most interesting to me at the moment. But I basically turned on the camera to show you the view, and I've just been waffling, so I will turn around and show you the view from my bedroom. So this is it. The window's a bit steamed up, but I can see the sea, and we're staying in a place called Padstow, basically by the estuary here. There's like a path like around this bit that you can't see, but it's called the Camel Trail, and it's a 5-mile long trail that goes from here to Wadebridge, and then it continues, it's 5 miles to Wadebridge, and then it continues on to Bodmin and some other places. And that is where I'm going to go and run. Obviously not all the way because I'm tired, but I'm probably going to do about 3 or so miles. So yeah, that's what I'm going to go and do now. So I will check in again later when I've read more of the Poppy one. Okay, so it's the next morning and I'm gonna sit down while my dad is out for a run and my mom is getting ready for the day and read a bit more of this. I am now on page 268, so I'm over halfway through and I'm just starting chapter 13. So I've read a couple of chapters in part 2 and it's getting very intense. So basically throughout the first part of this book, Rin was learning about her connections with the gods, and she learned that she had an ability to sort of conjure fire. And in the previous couple of chapters, the Federation of Mugen has basically started to invade Nikara, which is the land that Rin lives in, and there was a big battle at Sinagard, which is the city that she's been living in because of the academy being there, and she was able to conjure fire, as I just said, to kill one of the generals of Mugen. So yeah, because of that, a lot of her classmates have been asked to join different divisions of the military, the army, and she thought that's what was going to happen to her, but she's actually been told that she needs to join the 13th division, which is known as the Cike, which is basically like a band of assassins for the Empress, and a lot of them are like Rin, also shamans, and also have different sorts of abilities, I think. And this guy called Alton, who was really sort of famed at the academy before she got there from one of the classes above her, is now her commander. So that's where I'm at the moment. She's like working with him and I think learning, I'm not sure, maybe to harness her powers, or like learning more about them and learning about what she's going to be expected to do. But also last night I did quite a bit of looking into the Sino-Japanese War, because that's what this book is based on in parts. Like a lot of the battles and the events that happened in that way are based on that. So that's actually quite harrowing, like learning the real history behind what's occurring here. So yes, I'm gonna have a little read of this now and I'll update you shortly when I've read a little bit more. I'm also assuming that a lot of the characters who've gone off to join other divisions, like Kitai and Rin's roommate, whose name I can't think of right now, but I assume that they're going to come back into it at some point, because I mean they've all just gone. I assume we're going to find out what happened to them at some point, because I really like those characters. And also her professor, her old professor Jiang, is still, no one really knows where he is or what has happened to him, so I'm assuming I'm going to find out that too, and that intrigues me quite a lot, because I think he's still a bit mysterious. You do learn gradually a lot about him through the first part of the book, because at the start he's presented as this sort of like weird kooky professor, and then you sort of learn why he's the way he is, and only Rin really seems to really understand him. When she starts learning about the gods and shamanism, she understands fully like why he is how he is, but we don't know where he's gone after the battle at Sinagard, so I'm hoping we're going to find out and find out why. Belle! Hello. Why is it that in every reading vlog I ever do, I always end up vlogging from bed? I saw I do actually get out of my pyjamas during the day. Yeah, so sorry for not really vlogging that much in terms of the actual day. I put a couple of clips in from where I've been in Cornwall today because it was really pretty and I've had a really nice day. So I have actually managed to get quite a lot of reading done today, just in like the car and in the like 5 minutes here and there that I've had in the flat between going out. So I'm on page 368 now, so I think that's pretty much almost exactly 100 pages from where I was this morning, and I've just finished chapter 17, so I'm going to start chapter 18 soon. Obviously 18 comes after 17, duh. Basically, I think last time I updated I was just getting into part 2, and there'd been one battle in which Rin had summoned the god and was able to use her fire abilities, I guess the word is. Over the last 100 pages she hasn't actually been able to use the fire again, and you're sort of going along with her on that journey and learning like why that may be, that she's not been able to connect to the gods again. She says that the reason she thinks she hasn't been able to do it is because she's scared, because when she's had the power previously and the ability to project flames, essentially, she hasn't really known how to deal with it and how to stop it. So that's quite interesting, going on that journey and like trying to figure out why and like what's going to make her be able to do it again, because I assume she is going to do it again at some point. Rin as a character, like, I don't know how I feel about her at the moment. She's interesting, but I feel like she seems quite different now to what she did in the first half of the book, but I guess that is like understandable because a lot of shit has gone down since the first half of the book. So at this point now we've completely left the academy setting behind, which I really enjoyed the academy in the first half of the book. Like, I really like stories in general that focus on boarding schools and those sorts of settings. This was like sort of a version of that boarding school setting, so I really enjoyed that, but I do completely understand why I've moved on from that now. Like, for a story of this nature and the fact that it's a series, like, it wouldn't have been practical obviously for it to all take place in the school. So I'm glad we got that element of the academy at the beginning and now we've moved on. So at the moment we've been following Rin with the Cike, and I don't feel like at the moment like I have a good enough grasp of all of the characters in the Cike as I do with the characters who are at the academy, like in particular Cike and Nasia. So Nasia has come back now, which is really interesting to see his like complete character change from the first half of the book, and I hated him to begin with and now I'm kind of warming to him. One of the most recent things that happened, I can't remember what it's called, but there was that thing that like kills and then takes the faces of different people, and that was like dark. I was quite shocked by that actually. There's not a lot that really shocks me in books, but that did. So I'm sure there's going to be more stuff in this book. Like, I know chapter 21 is coming and I've sort of read up a little bit on the historical event that surrounds, just so I'm ready for it, because I've heard other people say that that's what they did and I think that that is a good thing to do. I think I'm going to try and read like one more chapter before bed. As I said, I'm starting 18. I really don't want to start 21 tonight. I won't get that far anyway, but I think maybe if I can read one more chapter and then hopefully I'll be able to finish this tomorrow. Okay, so that is where the vlog ended. As I said at the beginning of the video, I actually ran out of camera battery and I didn't take my charger with me because I'm stupid. So I obviously had to end the vlog, but I really wanted to finish this book. I was so hooked and actually read through the last 100 or so pages of this so quickly. I will just get onto my rating first and then I'll sum up some final thoughts and feelings about it. So I gave this book a 5 out of 5 stars, and honestly it's completely changed everything that I thought I knew about my reading tastes. And if anyone has any recommendations of things that you think I might enjoy based on the fact that I enjoyed this, then please leave them for me in the comments. If it's fantasy, I highly doubt that I'll have read it. So also just carrying on with where I got to with the vlog, with my thoughts and feelings for the last part of this book. I think when I last checked in, I was on around chapter 19, so that it was obviously quite a way away from the end. I would say that I had about, let's see, that ended on page 390 and this is just over 500 pages, so I probably had about 150 pages left the last time I checked in. Obviously that also included chapter 21, which is the one that I'd heard a lot of people talking about and seen a lot of discussion about on Twitter. So before going into that chapter, I did actually read up on the historical event that specifically covered, and I think that was good because it sort of prepared me in a way. Like, I thought I was prepared going into it, and then I read it and I was like, oh my god. It was very difficult to read, just the way that R F Kuang like depicted those horrific things that happened was just so much, and I really appreciated in a way that she didn't shy away from doing that, because it really made me like sit and think on it, and especially knowing that this was grounded in real history. And I really do think that some of the writing in that chapter in particular, some of the imagery that was created is probably going to stay with me forever, and that's quite unusual for books to stick with me in that way. This is a bit of a tangent, but I feel like I spent so much time over the past 3 years when I was reading very heavily when I was on BookTube before, just trying to consume as much as possible and as quickly as possible. And I look back at my things that I really enjoyed, things that I gave 5 stars, and think I can't actually remember that. Like, it was so almost throwaway. Obviously there are some books that I read then that I would still consider to be my favourites and that I still really loved, but there are some that I just, they haven't stuck with me in any way, and it's really made me sit and think about what I really do define to be my favourites. And I think, I mean, I know it's only been a week, but I really do think that some of the things in this I know are going to stay with me. Does that make sense? I know that's a massive tangent, but that's how I feel about like that chapter in particular. And then some of the other things that happen, like when Rin is reunited with Venka and you hear about everything that happened to her, that is one of the most powerful bits of this book as well for me. And I don't know if Venka is a character that's going to come up again later on. So yeah, that was sort of chapter 21 and that segment of the book. And then part 3 to the end, I guess, I feel like I really flew through that bit quite quickly in comparison to the first 2 parts. And thinking back, I really enjoyed part 1, but I think part 1 was obviously the slowest part. I feel like I almost couldn't believe by the end of this book that the stuff that was covered in the very first 100 or so pages of this was like all in the same book. And even though it had only been less than a week from me starting this to me finishing it, I was like, oh my god, it feels like years ago that I read about Rin bribing her tutor to like let her enter the exam. Some more final thoughts and feelings. I love Cike. He's my favourite character, and I can't wait to see what becomes of him next. I was speaking to Lily from Lily Eleanor Reads about him because she is a huge fan of this series, and one of the reasons why I was so interested in reading it, because I've heard her raving it so much and hyping it up so much, and it got me so hyped, and I'm so glad that it did. But she said that Cike appears a lot more in the second book, so I'm very excited to see that. I also really like Ramsar, but I have a feeling there's something not very good is going to happen there. But I really like him. He's probably my favourite of the Cike at the moment. The one thing I will say about the Cike is I feel like the characters from the academy do stand out a little bit more in my head at the moment in terms of like clearly defined who's who. With the Cike, I know Ramsar and Kara and Chagan, and then the rest, and Alton, and then the rest of them sort of blend into one a bit for me at the moment. But I am hoping that in the later books, if they will continue to be in all of them, that their sort of characters are developed more, especially now that we're going to be completely out of the academy setting. Like, it does make sense that the characters from the academy have more impact on me in this one, I guess, because they were in it more. They were in it from earlier on than the Cike were. In terms of Rin's character, I really don't know what to think of her. And again, I was speaking to Lily about this, and it's obvious that one of R F Kuang's like aims with this series is to really make you think and sort of present a character who does all these horrific things, but because you're with her and because you know her backstory and you're almost in her head, you sort of understand. As I said to Lily, the girl just committed genocide at the end of this book, which is obviously not okay. I saw an interview or something that R F Kuang said that that's one of the aims that she had for this book, is to sort of present this character and to present what can happen to a person to change them from a peasant girl into something different altogether. A sort of dictator, I guess, is where we're probably going to go with this. I'm not sure, but I know that the person that Rin's based on was a dictator, I think, so I'm thinking that's where we're gonna go. So yeah, I have very complex feelings about Rin at this moment in time, and I doubt that they're gonna get any less complex as the series goes on. Where this book ends, obviously Rin has been told that she's in charge of the Cike, so that is going to be another major change and going to cause some more major developments to her character, I assume, in the second book, and it's just going to be chaos. I also really liked Jiang, Rin's law master, and then you learn some more about him as this goes, and I'm hoping that he's going to be in it more. I do just think at the end I was like, what would have happened if Rin would have just listened to him and not done all this stuff? But then I guess the book would have been really boring. Also, Alton's character, he wasn't one of my favourites. I mean, I'm guessing he's really dead, but is he really dead? Because Chagan said that he didn't like sense him leave, and he would have. So I'm not sure. So yeah, as you can tell, I was very, very invested in this book and I absolutely loved it. I think that's all I'm gonna say today. I feel like I have waffled a bit because I don't really know how to review books anymore, and I just wanted to sit down and have like a bit of an unscripted, candid chat about this book, so that we can maybe start a little discussion in the comments. So if you've read this book, let me know what your thoughts and feelings are. Let me know who your favourite characters are. No spoilers for the next few books, please, but if you've read them, let me know how they compare without telling me what happens, obviously. And yeah, that's everything. I'm gonna go now. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you're all keeping safe and staying well, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.